I'm back in the seed project we created in the last module, and I stopped this build process we ran with npm run build since I won't work on the Angular 2 frontend anymore for now. Instead, I want to focus on the backend and explain how this works, how we use Node.js there. So the assets folder is a folder I won't touch for now. Let's start by understanding how a request travels through our application, or what actually happens once you visit localhost 3000 there. The first thing we gotta understand is that with npm start, we start this bin www folder with the node command here, which basically means use Node.js, which we installed on our computer, remember that, use Node.js to execute this file. Now this file holds normal JavaScript code, and it uses a couple of tools we can use in Node.js, these extra packages I was mentioning in one of the earlier lectures. So I'm not going to walk you step by step through this file. What generally happens here is that we set up a port for our application. So the port you want to listen to, 3000 here, since we're on localhost and want to make sure that we're able to visit it there on a respective port. And then with create server, we create our server. And as an argument, we pass the app. The app again is imported from the app.js file here, as you can see in the import up here. So we should have a look at this app.js file next. Before doing so, let's then see that we created the server, and with server listen and then passing in the port, which is either 3000 or if we deployed it, a port specified in the environment variables, that with server listen, we actually tell our Node.js server to listen to any requests reaching our domain and this port here. Now, what we can see is that if we go to the terminal window, and this is in my IDE, it's a normal terminal window though, where we ran npm start, this process keeps running, it's not exiting. And this is good because of course our server should keep running, which is exactly what happens here. So this is our www file. All the other methods here can be ignored for now. That's basically just some code doing some optimizations and some error handling. The interesting part for us is the app.js file, because remember, this holds this app which is passed to the create server method, so it seems to be important. And it is. App.js holds the code which is executed on each request reaching our server, no matter which URL it is, if it is /user, /message, /whatever, this file here is reached at any point or with every request. In this file, we set up our Express app. Remember, Express is this framework we're using. It's built on top of Node.js. So it is Node.js, it is JavaScript, but it gives us some extra features. We started here. We create this app variable, and that was actually just the Express app getting started. On this Express app, we then run a couple of commands here, which basically first initializes our views, telling the Express app where our views, so the files we want to send back to the client, live. It's in this views folder as we configure it here, and which view engine we want to use, which means how do we want to parse these files on the server. You could send raw HTML files, but typically in a server-side only application, you use a templating engine to dynamically inject content into your templates, like a username if user logged in and something like that. The next step here is to apply some middleware. The middleware we're applying here is basically to extract the body of our request if it was sent. So we extract the data which might be attached to our request, to parse any cookies, and so on. We also, this is important, set up the static directory of our project here. It's set up to be the public folder. And why is this important? Because this configures that only this public folder will be accessible from outside, so from anywhere. All the other folders, routes, views, and bin, are only accessible by the server, so on the server, not from the internet. You can't read the routes file from the internet. It's not accessible. With the static command, we indicate that this public folder holds our static files which we want to make accessible. And it does. It holds our JavaScript code and our styles. So this folder definitely needs to be accessible. And once we actually load the application at localhost 3000/ for example, it will give us back some view which then runs as if it were placed in this public folder. So this public folder is the folder serving our application, our server application in the end. Thereafter we got this middleware. That's a middleware I added to prevent any CORS errors. CORS refers to cross-origin requests, which basically means requests coming from a different origin than the server. In an Angular 2 app, this might be a setup you have. In this project, we will serve the Angular 2 app from the same server as our server-side code runs on. But in your setup, you might have two different servers. One serving your Angular 2 app and doing nothing else, and the other one hosting your server-side code. That will lead to problems if you don't have these headers set up on your server, because these headers allow such a setup. Otherwise, it's not allowed because it poses a potential security issue if some other code tries to access your code on another server. Then finally, this line here is very important because it forwards, in this case, since the path is just /, any requests to the app routes variable, and the app routes variable happens to simply import the app.js file or the module exported in this file in this routes folder. So this forwards the request to this app.js file in the routes folder, so we should have a look at this file too. I'll do so in a second. Let me first continue in the app.js file here. So after forwarding it to the routes, the request shouldn't come back because normally our routes should handle any request reaching this website. But if we try to access a route which isn't defined in this routes folder in the files there, then we will come back to this app.js file here. Because then we didn't find a fitting route. This is why below this app use app routes statement here, I catch any requests which are still there, which did return, because these are 404 errors. The important part here is normally you would show some kind of error page. I don't do that here. Instead, I always render the index HBS file from my views folder, which also is the same file holding my Angular 2 application. The reason for this, and I'll come back to this in the Angular 2 module, is that we will set up our main routing in the Angular 2 app. So by default, most of our routes won't be found on the server. We only have the backend routes for Angular 2 to connect behind the scenes on the server. All the user-related routes are stored in the Angular 2 app. By default though, each request sent to the server, or whenever we reload the page, it will reach the server first and not Angular 2. So having the routes in the Angular 2 application is nice, but won't do the trick. Except for this setup, where I always send back the Angular 2 app, in which we basically have a setup where we can't get 404 errors on the server, we would have to handle that on the front end. So this setup here makes sure that we always render the Angular 2 application, which we need to do since our routes are set up there. This is this app.js file in the root folder. Now let's go to the app.js file in the routes folder, which is this file where all requests, or currently all requests here, fitting this pattern, having a / at the beginning, will get forwarded to. This file is very lean. It exports our router, and this router only has one route registered right now. It's a get route, as you can tell by this method. And this get route handles the / case, so localhost /, nothing else. And there we only execute one method, res_render, which uses the response object express.js gives us. It automatically passes it here in this callback function, which we need to set up on any middleware, and this is just a middleware we set up. And on this response object, which is created by express.js, we can call the render method to tell express.js, okay, create a new response and render a view. The view we want to render is the same as in the 404 error case. In the views folder, index.hbs, which holds our Angular 2 application. This is the request flow we have right now, leading to this page on each request reaching localhost 3000.